It's time for Supply Chain Now, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain: the people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton with Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's episode. So in this episode, we're kicking off a little mini end-of-year series where we're going to be gaining insights from each of our hosts here at Supply Chain Now. We're going to be working really hard today on today's episode to increase your business leadership IQ as we're spending some time with the one and only Kevin L. Jackson. Hey, quick programming note before we get started. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to find us and subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss conversations just like this. All right, no further ado, let's bring in our featured guest here today, Kevin L. Jackson, CEO of GC GlobalNet, author of the best-selling book, Click to Transform, and of course, host of one of our newest home run series here called Digital Transformers. Kevin, how you doing?
Hey, man, thank you very much, Scott.
Well, we really have enjoyed our collaboration going back to when we met at the DEMSCA event in February 2019 before the world changed.
Yeah.
And we only captured a few of the leadership roles you have in how we introduced you. So, you know, you've made us better and you've certainly made us stronger, especially when it comes to digital transformation. And we're excited about the year ahead. So great to spend time with you here today.
No, my pleasure.
So where we're going to start here, a lot of folks in our audience may already have a sense of who you are, but for the handful that don't, let's, tell us about yourself in a nutshell.
Well, you're right. I do a lot of things. I just like, being active. So I call myself an advisor, an educator, and an author because I do work with a lot of large companies and helping them in redesigning their business models. And I teach for Tulane University, and I provide strategic consulting and integrated social media services to companies like AT&T and Intel and Ericsson and other leading companies. As far as my background goes, I was a vice president at JP Morgan Chase, leading their global project management office. I was a worldwide sales executive for IBM, and at SAIC, I was the director of cloud solutions. I've also done a lot of work in the federal government. I was in the Navy for 15 years. I was a carrier pilot, worked with the Navy Space Technology program. Also, when I left, did some digital transformation projects for NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the intelligence community. So actually, I did go to school. I was I was at the U.S. Naval Academy Aerospace Engineering, and I was a postgraduate school in computers, and I have a master's in national security with the Naval War College. So retired in '94, and I was working in space systems, and I was a carrier pilot flying C2As and E2Cs, airborne early morning. So I've done a lot of different things.
Man, we could spend the next 6 hours getting all of your stories from those that who's who list of organizations you've worked with. So no wonder why you're the go-to expert for digital transformation and other things here. And we're pleased to have you as part of our team here at Supply Chain Now too.
Oh, thank
So
you.
let's talk about, it goes without saying, 2020 has been such a unique, historically challenging, insert your own cliche right there as you describe the year, but it's been an incredibly challenging year. But on the other side, there's always silver linings, and this year has taught us so much from a business, a supply chain, a technology standpoint that's going to make us better in future years, unique and ordinary years, I'll call it. But what's been a couple of your, let's call it 3 key takeaways when it comes to business here in 2020? What has the year taught you?
Well, when you're working in business, you're you look at what happens in your business life, how you want to support your customers, how marketplaces changes. But this year, the one thing that really, slaps you in the face is that change is inevitable, but more important, it may approach from any direction. It could be social upheaval, it could be a little bitty virus, it could be anything, right? So not only will change happen, but you have to have your, as I said in the military, head on the swivel because it comes from everywhere. And the second thing was, since change will come, you have to be a learning organization. Your business has to always understand what's happening, evaluate what's happening, and analyze what's happening, because the learning organizations are the best prepared for the changes that are inevitable. And how do you be prepared for these changes? How do you learn? Well, you have to maintain a diversity of worldview. And I think that's probably the third point I want to highlight. A diversity of worldview, a diversity of business experience, a diversity of educated thought. And that means a diversity in the people that are around you, in your staff, in your executives, in your employees, because it's that diversity that accelerates an organization's transition to their new future state. So if you're constantly changing, you got to be constantly thinking, constantly communicating, and constantly transitioning.
Excellent point there. And study after study, from those driven by the big four to
Mm-hmm.
the academic community, diversity, despite all the other good that it creates, the goodness it creates for organizations, if you look at it strictly as a bottom line, triple bottom line figure, it enhances and optimizes the bottom line returns of any organization. But what I also love, and we were talking about it earlier today on a live
Right.
stream, is it also helps you identify those blind spots that we all have, regardless of what any walk of life, any professional walk of life or personal walk of life. We all have our blind spots, and by creating that diversity of thought, it helps us identify and then address those in a successful way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's being able to see the environment from different shoes, from different perspectives, and being able to understand and to have empathy for others. That's important. That's critical to your success.
Great point. And certainly that's one of the lessons that we've learned here from 2020 that I hope sticks.
Hmm.
I can tell you from personal experience, um, as we have webinars or live streams or video or whatever podcasts,
Yeah.
you make that little glitch and you get frustrated and do it over. However, everything that has gone wrong in 2020, it's kind of breathed some fresh air into those productions, and really has retaught us what's important. And it's reintroduced some humanity and some authenticity to even public content that we deliver, and that's been a very welcome wave of honesty. So
Oh,
hopefully that sticks around.
yeah, it's important to recognize, and this is one thing it has done, is to recognize that everyone is a person. There are humans in everything that you do, and it's important for you to support the relationships that you build. Everyone builds different types of relationships. You have relationships with your family, with your business partners. You have relationships with strangers. And you need to recognize that whatever relationship it is, it's a two-way thing, and you have to support it.
Well put, as always, Kevin. All right, so speaking of, we were just talking kind of a learning, Eureka
Mhm.
moments. We all have plenty of them. We sometimes day in and day out, but certainly week in and week out. as you as you recall your
Yeah.
journey here in 2020, what's been one important Eureka moment?
Well, it's, you know what the most quoted saying in 2020 was? It's
You're on mute.
That's it. That's because everyone had to shift immediately to being online and using all of these collaboration tools. I mean, I don't know if it's WebEx or if it's Team or if it's Zoom or whatever, right? Everyone had to jump on these collaboration technologies. And one thing I found is that people were, hesitant. You see people that don't want to turn on their video because they don't want to be seen. They've never used the tool. And these tools have been around for years. And what I found out, this was the Eureka moment. So many organizations were just playing lip service to embedding modern tools into their everyday business workflows.
Wow.
I mean, these tools have been around for years, but they've been sitting on the shelf because there was no need to use them. Okay. And I talked to this one person. They said, if I had known that I could just get online and talk to people and get my work done, I would have done it years ago. And I said, well, why didn't you? Well, nobody made me. you know, so it's amazing how much more efficient and effective organizations could have become if they've just used the technologies that were sitting on the shelf. Okay.
What
And that's what we've learned in 2020.
excellent point. It's interesting. I can remember maybe in college or maybe in the last few years,
Hmm.
everyone still talks about the technologies in the Jetsons, the cartoon.
Right.
And one of them, of course, was the video phone. Wherever you were, and the Jetsons could always connect with people
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
video phone. When are we going to get that technology? And I thought it's supposed to already be here. And then, of course, now it's when it's really here in any way you want it, really.
Right.
All of a sudden, you've got video conference fatigue. You don't want to always be seen, because
Yeah.
you might not be looking good that day, or
Right.
you
Right.
might be stressed.
Exactly.
So I guess we all have to be careful what we ask for, technology and otherwise, right?
It'll deliver. Yep. It'll come.
All right. So speaking of what's to come,
Hmm.
really have enjoyed via live streams and social commentary and our shows together, just from a sheer digital transformation or really a greater technology point of view. I always learn loads from what you share. So as you're looking, Kevin, at 2021,
Right.
what's one thing you think our listeners and members of our global community should really keep our eyes on?
Well, we were just talking about how technology was just sitting on a shelf and people never used it. And then the pandemic came and organizations needed to figure out how to get their job done without coming into the office. So everybody, jumped on Zoom, jumped on Teams. Everyone started figuring out how to do their work remotely. Companies started investing into these technologies to help people maintain their relationships. Okay, but what's going to happen in 2021 is that some some companies, some organizations will realize what they have learned, and they will build on that learning, and they will start leveraging their technologies in more effective ways, and they will look at new technologies, and they will continue their investments. And those companies will also realize that digital transformation is more than just technology, right? It's really redesigning business models. And those companies will segment themselves from the others that just see digital transformation as technology. And they see it as well, that's something that we had to do. Now we'll just go back to normal. And there will be a rapid segmentation in the marketplace between companies that really transform their business models and leverage technology to be more effective, and those that don't. They will go, those that think there is a quote back to normal, and they will fall by the wayside. And we will see that in, the spring or early summer of 2021, when we think, okay, wow, we have the vaccine. We can, start thinking about taking the mask off. We can start thinking about coming into the office, and some companies will do that, right? Others will say, we actually did a lot better when we were leveraging this technology. Yeah, we can come in the office sometimes, but just do it when we need to.
Right.
And those companies will become even more efficient, more effective. And the market, in each industry, you will have companies that will continue to grow, continue to learn, continue to transform, and others that will sort of settle back into what's quote normal.
Yeah, there's no a couple thoughts that I heard you say there in one way or another. First off, it is about business transformation, not specifically. I mean, digital is part of that,
Right.
but it's the bigger picture. It goes beyond just a technology play. There is one of the things I heard you say, and then secondly, there surely is not a finish line.
No.
I mean, just when you get to handle and maybe as we've seen organizations successfully transform, but it doesn't stop, and you can't rest on those laurels because consumers keep what they demand and
Oh,
how
yeah.
they demand. It continues to evolve, as well as market conditions in general.
Right. This reminds me of the last live stream we did when we had AT&T on board. And Sandro Natali, who was responsible for consumer interaction and that digital interaction at the endpoint.
Right.
And we said that you have to really focus on supporting your customers, your employees, and also your business partners. That is really the frontier that you have to focus on when it comes to digital transformation, and that will continually change. So every business, I guess, any business that has either customers, employees, or business partners, huh? will have to continually change.
Well, yeah, and to your point, unfortunately, if you look at retail, there's been companies that have made the adjustment and made the very tough adjustment and found new ways to serve and meet consumer expectations, right? And then on the flip side, we've seen no shortage of bankruptcies. I think this is 2020
Right.
is going to be the biggest year of bankruptcy for retail. And I would argue, just to generalize, I try not to paint with a broad brush,
Right.
but there are some companies that will be blaming their failure on the pandemic when really at their root cause is that they just refuse to accept the new reality that retail is in and refuse to listen to their customer.
Right. Or maybe even refuse to listen to themselves, their own staff, their own
Mm.
executives. They refuse to look at what was happening with their bottom line and to take action on it. I mean, you can sit back and observe the change and choose to do nothing.
And that's a choice. That's right. Excellent point. Hey, before we talk about what to expect with digital transformers in 2021,
Right.
I want you to put your professor hat on. I'm not sure what your title is at Tulane, but I bet you and your students have some of the most fascinating conversations, especially given your experience and how much you've done in the quote real world. What are those interactions like? What are those exchanges with the up and coming and maybe already here generation?
Well, one of the things that I I recognize is that there is truly a sea change in worldview. There's a huge difference between, our generation, my son's generation, and my daughters. My son and my daughter are like 12 years apart, right? And there is so much difference between the way they see things, the way they accept things, the way they interact with society, and that's reflected in the business leaders that are coming up when I teach either undergrad or grad school. The expectations are completely different. They expect these companies to be, leveraging the advanced technologies, and they say, I go to this company and you can't even do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. How can they, really be in business? And you talk about things like technical debt, and they say, well, what's that? I say, well, it's important to know because that's why these companies aren't changing, right? They've made these investments that they have to work off. Everything has a cost, and there's a cost to not keeping up with the changes, and it's up to you to understand not just the present but the past as well. And knowing the present, expecting the future, and understanding the past are all important. And that's some of the discussions that we have. Say, well, why are the companies doing it like this? And I said, well, because back in 1990, oh, and just linking this everything as a connection, and that's what I really love about teaching, right? Bringing up those connections, understanding the different views. What we talked about before, that diversity of worldview.
Are you I know in some of my recent in the last few years, as I've spoken to some classes and as I participated even in some high school remote internships, which are led by some fascinating business leaders here in Atlanta, I'm constantly, just when I think I can't get more surprised by how sharp these young professionals
Yeah.
or students are, the next wave, raises the bar. Are you having similar experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. They come out of left field. Well, why can't you do it like this? And I said, there's no reason.
Oh, that's great.
I write it down in a little book, and I say, I'm going to take that to the next board meeting.
They make us all better for sure.
Yeah, they do.
All right, so let's talk about Digital Transformers, one of our newest series here at Supply Chain Now. I know that you're involved from, as we already talked about, books and other podcasts and live
Yeah.
streams. You keep a busy schedule, so we're pleased to have you a sliver of that here on the Digital Transformer series. So what can our audience expect in that series as we move into 2021?
But see, I'm really excited about our collaboration because, first of all, we all interact with multiple supply chains, and the way the supply chain took a real hit at the beginning of the year with all of the changes with the global pandemic, with the way they broke down, and how they are now being rebuilt across every industry. So that was one of the reasons I was really excited to be working with Supply Chain Now, because you had the pulse of that supply chain and where it's going. And I wanted to be part of that new change. Okay. And as we talked about earlier, there's going to be a huge segmentation between companies that have learned from 2020 and that are implementing their new future in 2021, and the companies that don't. And that's going to be quite apparent in the supply chain, how they make them leverage digitalization in the supply chain, how they leverage communication and information, how they connect the suppliers with the end consumers. and leverage that information flow and mine that information flow. And more important, verify that information flow. You know, the other thing that we heard so much in 2020, other than you're on mute, was that's fake news, you
Right.
know, and we are getting so much fake news in our everyday life, but fake news in the supply chain is catastrophic. Okay, so the suppliers, the vendors, and the consumers need to understand how to uh, evaluate the information that they're getting about the products and services. And there's an information supply chain that has to be created and built. So I really want to highlight that segmentation by showcasing companies that are leading the pack with respect to um, informing the entire supply chain, making it visible, making it transparent, and leveraging that to create brand new business models. And I want to contrast their experience with the large majority that will be left behind. And I think that would educate your audience, right? And it would enable, myself, Supply Chain Now, and all of our extended family to do better with their business, and with whatever their goals are in life.
I love that. Yeah. So our community is gonna have the opportunity to add a PhD to their education
Not quite,
when
not
it comes.
quite.
No,
Maybe.
this is great. What a learning opportunity, and excited about what's to come. I think we'll have some big news as the calendar flips with sponsors for 2021 for this new series. It's been really well received. So I appreciate your leadership, and we really are grateful for our collaboration with you,
Oh, I'm looking
Kevin.
forward to
Yeah, so much opportunity, so little time, right?
it.
Well, let's make sure folks know how to connect with you, whether they're interested in your best-selling book or some of your keynoting that you do, or digital transformations and beyond. How can folks connect with you?
So, I'm on LinkedIn like everybody, I guess, Kevin L. Jackson, but also on Twitter. I do a lot of, I write a lot for a lot of different companies on the leading edge of how to leverage technology, how to redesign your business models. So I'm at Kevin_Jackson on Twitter. Or, hey, just send an email to Supply Chain Now, Amanda at Supply Chain Now, who is very good at tapping me on the shoulder when somebody wants something from me. So it's easy to get a hold of me.
She certainly is our air traffic controller here at Supply Chain Now, and we all need one of those. But yeah, Amanda at supplychainnow.com if you want to reach out, and we'll make sure the message gets to Kevin. And I know I lost a thought earlier from what you were saying about those information supply chains
Hmm.
and verification, and so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Greg's favorite word, provenance, because
Provenance, yes.
I think we're all, whether you're a supply chain practitioner or a leader or a consumer, we're going to hear that word and different synonyms of that word, and a lot more in the months ahead, so that
Yeah.
we all know we're dealing with the real thing. Which, what big company? The real, was that a Coca-Cola theme back in the 80s? Maybe
The
the real
real,
thing,
yeah, the real
right?
thing, right?
We're going to apply that in a big way to supply chain, and consumer goods here in the months ahead. All right. So Kevin, always a pleasure. I really enjoyed.
No.
See, I've learned about 18 new things about Kevin L. Jackson just in this brief conversation here. So hopefully our listeners enjoyed it as much as I have. We've been talking with Kevin L. Jackson, CEO of GC Global Net, author of the best-selling book Click to Transform, amongst others. Also host of our newest series, Digital Transformers. Thanks so much, Kevin.
No, thank you very much. Let's do a lot more.
Oh, tip of the iceberg. It's coming. Hey, to our audience, hopefully you enjoy this conversation as much as I have. You can see more conversations like this at supplychainnow.com. Be sure to find us and subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts from. Hey, on behalf of the entire team here, this is Scott Luton wishing our listeners nothing but the best. Hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And oh, by the way, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.